What's up, guys? Welcome to the first episode of our podcast, Powering Up. I'm Ryan from Windfall MTG, and in this podcast series, we will be discussing various topics in Magic from our perspective of playing in a high-powered to competitive environment. Think power level 8 and up. In this first episode, we would like to take some time and talk about our idea of powerful blue spells. And each of us has prepared a list, and I will be joined here shortly by Ron, Nash, and Jordan, the three people that typically help me with the gameplays. And we will be discussing various things about our strongest blue spells. And a disclaimer I want to get out of the way before we go into this, right, is if you think about it, Magic's been around for over 25 years with like 4 sets a year and 200 cards a set. So there are something like 20,000 cards. So picking 10 is less than a fraction of a percent of the cards in the game. So just because a card doesn't make this list does not mean it's bad. And when you're dealing with such a small fraction of the entire playable card count, order at this magnitude doesn't really matter. So the lists are not in any order. It's just whatever came up in conversation the quickest. And yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into the discussion. Which one of you would like to...
My podcast.
My podcast.
I thought you said our 10 favorite.
Okay, let's go around and discuss what each of us took the definition of the strongest blue card to be.
What you thought?
Mine was basically the blue cards that I played that I felt were standalone, in the best scenario, the strongest cards in blue.
I personally did the strongest cards on their own or in specific archetypes in blue that I would run or would consider to run.
See, now you do that because you're a control player and you want to really, you would use all the cards. Myself, I picked cards that were in my deck, and I play mostly a creature deck, so they're not going to be maybe as strong as yours, but they're strong in my deck for me, and that's why I picked them. Jordan?
For me, I picked the strongest cards in blue that I played, and that I've had the experience of
Playing against.
Okay.
Want to start us off with one of those cards then, Jordan?
Just so you know, these blue cards are in no order specific. They're weakest to power, least powerful. They're all very strong in the world, right? Let's start with the most hot topic one, Cyclone Rift.
Oh, of course,
I don't like Cyclone Rift.
I think all of us do agree that's strong.
I had it on my top 10. There goes one of mine.
It's also on my top 10.
Yeah.
I have it on my top 10 hated most blue cards list.
Ah, very good. Yes. You should be on both lists.
In the caption page, there's a lot of controversy around it, saying that it should be a card that should be banned due to just how extremely game-changing and how easy it is to put in a deck.
Dude, it's easy to put in a deck, but to cast the overloaded cost, you have to have 7 mana. I don't think that's a ban-worthy card, especially when 5 mana cards and even 2 mana cards can end the game.
Yeah, comparing it to something like a Thassa's Oracle, which is hands down stronger in my opinion, and cheaper to win the game with, there's no comparison.
Also,
ban-worthy.
Also, Cyclonic Rift doesn't even outright win you the game.
It just gives you the advantageous position.
Yeah, and that would be like banning Toxic Deluge because wiping indestructible creatures would be too strong.
Anything to add?
No, I'm good.
For me, it's just more a lot of people just don't play around it. If someone's in blue and they have 7 mana open and they didn't do anything on their turn, it's very clear they're holding it for something, and you need to force them to do it. In advantageous time.
There's also cards that have been printed recently to counter the card specifically, Teferi's Protection and Ashaya, I believe your name.
Also, just counter spells counter the card. Playing smart is really the best way to get around Cyclonic Rift. And
people don't.
That's why people not doing that. I'm getting a little salty over there.
Well, if you're not playing a creature deck, then yeah, you can play around it. If you're playing a creature deck, you kind of don't have much choice. Because he's like, well, I won't play my creatures because I know he's going to cycle.
Ever tried
He's not
drawing
going to
and
do
going?
that.
Wait, don't you run like 3 0-mana counter spells? Can't you get rid of the Cycrypt? Okay, so one of my top 10s is actually Force of Will, which is a great counter to the aforementioned Cyclonic Rift.
I also actually have it on my list.
So do I.
Another notable card is Pact of Negation and
I also have notable ones being Force of Negation and Fierce Guardianship.
they all kind of do the same thing, and they allow you to play around Cycrypt even when you don't have the mana to play around Cycrypt.
Or any other problematic
So
cards.
I agree with the Pact of Negation.
Yeah. Like,
The thing that's so great, so interesting about these counter spells is they have their own niches. Like, for example, Force of Will does a catch-all counter spell, while
Force
Pact of
Negation
Negation is really good if you want to be a fast combo that doesn't really care about having to worry about that cost, you gotta win anyways. Or with Force of Negation, which is a card that you want to use to counter someone else's game plan.
Rather than protect a combo. Because you can only cast for free on your opponent's turns.
Yep.
Also in this niche...
Fierce Guardianship, which is why.
Oh yeah, Fierce Guardianship is ridiculous, but also in this niche we can also think of Mental Misstep as his free counter spell that allows you to maybe not necessarily stop a Cycrypt, but like stuff like Consultation that are...
Carpet of Flowers even.
Oh, Carpet of Flowers. Yeah.
This is the value top, which is notorious for being hard to get rid of.
Yeah, but like one of the strongest cards in the format is a 1-mana card, and the ability to stop it with 0 mana just is really game changing.
Hard agree. Next card? I have on my list is just efficient card draw enchantments, namely Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora.
Yeah, every blue deck should probably be running those.
With the exception of more for some metas that aren't really
Creature, or which are more creature heavy.
Yeah.
But still, they have just such a high, like, card draw to mana, like, ratio. You draw so many cards versus the amount of mana you put into them, and it causes your opponents to have to play around them or misplay into them.
Oh, yeah.
Because the thing with like Rhystic Study, all you need to do is draw 2 cards. You've made your mana's worth. And for Mystic
Hell,
Remora, you only draw 1.
You have to just make them pay 2 more mana, and you've got your mana worth. It's
Yeah.
a stats card of that piece. Or at that point.
If they pay it 3 times, you've basically net evened on mana, and at that point, any value it gets you after that is just positive. And Remora is even easier. You just need one person to hit the trigger, even if they pay for it. It's 1 mana for 4 mana. That's a hell of a bargain.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was looking at how to make my deck and basically how to increase my hand size. So I was thinking of Manipulate Fate and Foresight, because both of those allow me to pull cards out and then exile them, but I can then cast them from exile.
Because it's a food chain list.
Yep, because that's so. In addition to the Fierce Guardianship and the Path of Negations, that's like we're to 4 of my cards. I still got a few others, but
Anything to say on those?
definitely don't like the board wipe ones.
I was actually debating putting those 2 cards on my top 10 because I also have a food chain list and they're also really fucking strong in that deck.
Well, it's just it just gives you 3 more cards in your hand.
And they replace
Basically, yeah. Or at worst, you might already have one of those cards in your hand, and it just lets you get rid of a dud in your deck, right?
like another land.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You can thin your deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just incredibly efficient and very much a niche card that allows you to do something that you normally wouldn't do.
They also redraw themselves, which is amazing. Each of them says draw a card, so they're replacing themselves plus grabbing you 3 cards.
And for only 2 mana.
Yeah. Very mana efficient for how much they get you.
2 mana draw 4.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Let's look at another one. One of my favorites all time, Ponder.
Classic. That's a classic blue card.
I absolutely love Ponder. I fell in love with it the moment I saw it, and I run it in pretty much every blue deck I own.
But isn't it better to run a Jace instead of just a Ponder? Because that's an infinite Ponder. Every turn you can Ponder.
No.
Every turn you can brainstorm.
Brainstorm. But speaking of brainstorm,
I like the Ponder. I have it in my honorable mentions, but I think the best cantrip, hands down, has to be Brainstorm.
Of course.
I'm gonna slightly disagree.
it says draw 3 cards. It's 1 mana. That's Ancestral Visions.
Haven't heard that before. Anyways, I'm gonna slightly disagree with you here because I do agree it's strong, but it's very strong only when you have a lot of shuffle effects to abuse it.
Or deck manipulation.
In general. Self-mill, scry, miracles even.
But any deck I
think Ponder overall is is a more consistently strong card, whereas Brainstorm is a stronger card in the cases where it is stronger.
Okay, I'll concede that, but most of the time when you're running Brainstorm, you can afford to run Ponder, Preordain, and other top deck manipulating effects. Also, most decks can slot fetch as bar 1.
Bar price.
Oh, bar price, yeah.
Well, usually they're not going to counter you drawing; they're going to counter you casting.
Yeah. So even if you just
counter your wallet,
just run proxies.
You know, I think talking about drawing is a great segue into my next card, which is Hole Breacher.
Ah, yes. The big bad boogeyman.
With the honorable mention of Narset Parter of Veils. And, I mean, all those cards you guys just talked about, completely negated. I just got treasures.
Especially because of how they're worded. At least with Narset, you can at least draw 1 card
on each turn. But with Hole Breacher, it's sort of just like Notion Thief would be, which is any card draw not from your draw phase. Just can host so many strategies, can enable so many strategies,
the worst
wheel
part
locking.
At least with Initiator, you're only really worrying about more higher level play, and with decks with more money put into more tutors and effects. With Hole Breacher, every from casual to high power, everyone wants to draw cards. That's just a universal thing. So when you have a card that not only just hoses on card draw, but also gives you insane advantage, it just makes it so feels bad.
I think the biggest,
especially when it's so efficient on both mana and casting time.
It has flash, right?
It does have flash.
Yeah, and also it's asymmetric, which means every deck is basically a white deck now.
Compare it to a Spirit of the Labyrinth, which is a white card, which is a symmetrical effect for 1 less mana. This gives you advantage, is asymmetrical, and gives you flash.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Not being able to draw basically determines whether or not colors are powerful or not, and that basically nerfs every deck at the table down to the lowest power level the deck can be.
So slivers.
I have a much lower power draw spell, which would be Spellbreaker.
Spellseeker.
With tutors. Tutors.
Yeah, and it's just it helps me draw, but it's not as
It's card selection.
Yeah. Really good card selection.
The Hole Breacher.
Yep. And I too had a bunch of tutors from my list in my selection.
I think all of us must have.
Yeah.
I had Mystical and Whir.
I like Mystical, Merchant Scroll, Muddle the Mixture. It's a versatile tutor that can also save your ass.
Scepter.
I also had Whirs and Fabricates, artifact tutors, which blue is kind of known for too.
I even think Personal Tutor, which describes you a sorcery, I believe, is strong.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry about that.
So, other than that,
But yeah, the ability to grab any spell from your deck to hand is really strong on the Spellseeker. Card selection most of the time is better than card advantage. For instance, being able to pick the one perfect card is usually better than drawing 10 or 20 cards.
Yeah. And with Spellseeker, you get options such as counter spells, second grips, cantrips.
Or just grabbing a Wincon. Yeah. Speaking of...
And it's an ET feature, so it can be abused.
Yeah. I had on my list one of the strongest Wincons in blue, Thassa's Oracle.
I think we all must have had that.
I have that on my list also.
Even if you hate the card and don't like playing it, You kind of have to if you're playing it all to win.
I'd also like to have an honorable mention of Jace Wielder of Mysteries.
Same.
As it just overtook Labman for a Labman finish, as well as Thassa.
Oh,
Just made Labman kind of irrelevant.
Dude, Jace Wielder of Mysteries is just like the power cut version of Labman. For 1 more mana, he has the +1. That means he can solo win it, not need the Hapless Researcher or the other draw effect in play. It's just a stronger version of Lab
And
Maniac.
the Planeswalker, which is arguably harder to kill.
Depending on your meta and your power level, yeah. Especially in our meta,
And depending if you're winning on the same turn, especially because you don't have time to attack.
Oh, yeah, no,
More
kill
people
spells
have
can't...
creature-based rules than permanent-based or Planeswalker-based rules. Okay, for me, another pet card that I have is Narset's Reversal.
I almost put that on.
That is very strong, yeah. It's if I'm remembering correctly, kinda like a counter spell, but it doesn't say counter, right? So it can
It's a bounce, and you get the spell that you bounce.
Okay, so it can be used to counter non-counterable spells.
But you have to cast it yourself, so like you can't counter a Supreme Verdict that way.
But it can be used to steal powerful effects like Praetor's Grasp or Adnos.
Very strong, honestly, very underrated card. I don't see it as much as I feel like I should. Because it's very versatile.
It's at counter spell mana level, it's instant speed, and it gives you a lot of versatility.
It's in most cases just a stronger
The only
counter spell.
downside is that if you're trying to use it as a traditional counter spell
You can't hit
against
creatures.
lower CMC stuff or against creature or permanents, it sucks. Because it doesn't really counter.
Yeah.
So I have another creature card here. This again kind of goes with one I talked about earlier before. Mist Hollow Griffin, which I think we affectionately call Marshmallow Griffin.
Yes.
Because you can cast it from when it's exiled, and it's just again that's just
part of the game plan.
Yeah. Being able to cast stuff once it's been removed is really strong. Because
Versatility and its pseudo card advantage.
And it's an enabler for an infinite combo.
You can also purposefully, like, while digging, use a more risky dig spell to get to your combo piece, knowing that if you put that card into exile, you still get it. For instance, like Tainted Pack and Consultation can then be used as tutors, as opposed to just win conditions.
Yeah, and the other cards I have are essentially, just creature cards, but so Phyrexian Metamorph, which is it just copies another creature on the field. But the advantage of it is that it's 3 and a blue, but you can turn around and cast it if you don't have blue mana, like paying life instead.
And it can also copy artifacts, which is underrated. In that
it is just a stronger copy artifact, and copy artifact's already a stronger strong card.
A stronger clone.
Yeah, straight up. I think also another card like that is Phantasmal Image. That's really strong because it's only 2 mana, can copy any creature, and it being targeted effect doesn't really matter because if it's being targeted, it would be to remove it anyways.
Yeah.
So if that happens, it doesn't matter. It's just you can copy your opponent's commander, you can copy an opponent's advantage piece.
Yeah, definitely.
With both of them. Card that we haven't talked about that I think is kind of a shame is Windfall.
Yeah, I have it right here on my list. Windfall and Twister.
Twister, specifically.
Windfall's bigger brother.
It's such a good card, we should name a channel after it.
Oh, yeah, someone should. Yeah.
Anyways, they just... I don't know, those 3 mana wheels are just always good. Draw you, refill your hand, can disrupt your opponents.
It's insane.
Twister can disrupt graveyard strategies and enable Twister loops. Windfall can enable graveyard strategies, depending on what you're trying to do.
Also, if you manage to ramp one of these out before your opponents have landed their like turn 1 and turn 2 acceleration, it just blows people out of the water, right? Like if you're going first and you just like fast mana out a Windfall after dumping all the stuff in your hand you can, like that gets you a full new 7.
Disrupts your opponent's start. Also, if you pair it with some cards we mentioned earlier, Narset or Hull Breacher,
you
can just lock out your opponent from their hand.
Yeah. One of my cards that might be a little weird is Back to Basics. Because it just hoses certain decks. Like 3 and 4 color and 5 color decks. 5 color decks being really strong right now. It just completely shuts them off once they've tapped.
I do agree it's strong, but I want to just say that it's very weak the lower power you get, because lower power you're more incentivized to run basic lands because there's a lot of really efficient basic tutors.
And most casual deck players generally run 2 or 3 color decks simply because it's much easier to make mana bases out of.
And much cheaper.
Yeah. But it is it is a card very much like the deck Yisan that scales relative to the power level it's played into. Into very low power levels, it's a very low powered card. But once you get to that upper echelon, that like 9-10 power level deck, it kind of just hoses the entire meta. And if you're playing a mono color deck, you get to completely avoid the penalty and still lock out all the strongest decks. It's basically asymmetric.
I would like to name a few cards that can't mess it up, like Seaborn Muse and Derevi, where they can't gain advantage out of it. So it's not like it's just a end all be all, just everyone's just screwed over if they're playing duels.
I would also like to say that there's a lot of very low mana win cons in the format currently. Thassa's Tainted Pact, which is 4 mana. Hermit Druid, which is even outclassed and is only 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need that much mana to win currently, which is why I think it's a little under.
Well, but a lot of people play at least some non-basic lands, and so if you can get into turn 2 or 3, and all of a sudden you lose double their mana.
They tap out to cultivate their board, and you just slam this card. That can lock an entire deck out. Yeah, that is. Surprisingly, it even works very well against Get Rog and other stuff like that.
So another card that can that I play that will take some of that sting away is Peregrine Drake, because it will actually untap up to 5 cards when it comes in.
Lands.
Yes, so land cards, and
5 of those cards.
and
5 of those.
It enables a lot of infinite combos as well.
Especially with Animar being able to reduce its cost. Wow, that voice crack.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been recording all day.
Another card that's probably right in your deck is Gilded Drake that I have on my list. And it can just hose...
It was so close to being on my list.
It can just hose specific, commander-specific strategies sometimes. Like, as we just mentioned, Animar. You steal the Animar. There's no more cost reduction going on now. He just has a 3/3 dork.
Yeah, and
even then, you can also just go for the value pen and steal a value piece from your opponent. It's just so efficient.
Steal a Thrasios.
And it's so abusable because you just just flicker it back onto your field and steal another creature, another. It's just so strong. I just felt so bad that I couldn't get it back when it was cheap.
Is Homeward Path only you get your stuff back, or everyone?
Everyone.
Oh, okay. I was curious if you could run it in a list with Gilded Drake and use that to exploit the Gilded Drake, but no, okay.
Or you can just, like, Deadeye.
You can flicker it, yeah, with, like, Deadeye or something. And it is one of the most efficient steel cards. It is a 2-mana Mind Control, right? That's the 5-mana enchantment variant? Yeah.
5-mana, or 2-mana Treachery.
It's a 2-mana Treachery without the untap.
Because most steel effects are 5.
Are at least 5, yeah. Some even more.
For the cheapest one's 4. You got anything left?
Nope. Pretty much everything else that I had was covered by you guys.
I do have 2 more things on my list, but I'll let you go first.
I have Dramatic Reversal.
Of course.
Because even when not ran as a combo piece, blue is such an artifact-centric color. Being able to untap all your artifacts is kind of a broken effect.
Yeah.
I do think it's strong, but I think it's only strong when paired with Isochron Scepter. At least, top 10 worthy when paired with it. So I personally don't have it on my list, but I do think it's very strong, especially when done like that, because you get, generally speaking, infinite mana and win the game on the spot with it.
It can also win with
Storm, but that's not a deck anymore.
Yeah.
The thing that I find so crazy is that such a meta-defining card is a common from Kaladesh.
Yeah. It
No one really took a look at it at first, and then they started thinking about this second.
What's that one stupid card from?
The worst thing is, like a year ago, this would have been like probably the strongest card around, but now it's probably the bottom of this top 10 when compared to stuff like Thassa's and
Ristic even.
all the. Yeah, it's gotten power crept out so much by the like tainted food chain like meta.
Another card I have on here. It's kind of like a category of cards, not specifically, but I'm going to use Dig Through Time as the specific card. But cards that look at a number of cards and give you a like lower amount from them, like Impulse, look at 4, get 1.
That was something I wanted to bring up all the way back when we were talking about tutors.
It's like a
being able, digging those 8 cards to get the
7.
Whatever, the 7 cards to get the 2 you need, right? Like if you look 7 and you're about to die to everything, and you see that Cyclonic Rift,
Or that Force of Will.
or that like, or frick, just like, even like a Gilded Drake to steal the commander that's about to tutor for something.
Yeah.
Like the ability to pick that 1 out of 7 is really, really strong, because something that you do a lot, especially in cedh, is casual players are too scared to overdraw their hand, right? Like, sometimes you cast a big draw spell,
But you don't.
knowing that you're going to discard down to hand size on your turn, just because you want to look at that many cards, right? Because like drawing 20 and picking the best 7 is like way better than just drawing up to 7. Yeah.
Especially if you have a graveyard strategy or graveyard sub-thief that you can abuse those cards that you discard with.
And also, realistically speaking, pretty much every deck should have some way of getting recursion.
Or value through the graveyard.
Or just that, whether it be for delving,
They
or
gather with dig.
witnessing, or
Twister.
or answering.
Or flashing back.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
There's so many options.
Last card?
for
I have one more as well.
Last card
Well, I have
is
one after.
Reality Shift for me, because it is very, very, very good, very efficient, very cheap removal for blue, which is a color that normally doesn't get much removal. And
Creature removal specifically.
any removal of any type, like the next best removal is what? Unsubstantiate?
Pongify. I would say that
Chain of
Pongify is
Vapor.
arguably better, if not equal to it. And Rapid Hybridization as well.
I don't know, putting a card in exile where graveyard shenanigans can't really abuse it.
And also the
It's very much meta dependent, because there are some decks that just don't care at all.
flipping the top card also, especially against a non-creature heavy deck, can sometimes just get a win con like face down.
Exiled, yeah.
I remember one time I was playing a game with a guy who Vampiric Tutor and purposely got rid of one of his
Yes,
swords
it also-
down.
It also acts as counter tutors for those top deck tutors like Mystical Tutor and Worldly Tutor. Yeah.
Not Worldly, because
Without
Worldly gets a
Worldly.
creature. E-Tutor, Light Tutor.
Oh, and Land Tutor, yeah.
Or Vamp Tutor if they, you know.
Or Vamp Tutor, yeah. Because, like, I mean, most of the time when,
Vamp Tutor,
especially
Adnos.
in higher power, you're Vamp Tutoring for Adnos or for, like,
Consultation.
Peer or Consultation. Something that wins you the game when you cast it.
Or gives you a lot of value.
Yeah.
Alright, my last card, and I believe this is the last card of the entire thing, is Expropriate, actually. And I have a caveat on here that it's not for competitive, but for high power. Because there are decks that can use Expropriate very effectively in competitive, like Narset. But overall, it's not that great in competitive, but it just hoses a game out, because you steal everybody's commander or their best card, and now you have the 3 best cards on the board. You get an extra turn, or if your opponents are stupid, you get 4 turns.
Yeah, and if you can't win with 4 turns, you kinda shouldn't be playing.
But it can,
Especially, you're late enough in the game, you're casting a how big of a spell?
a 9-mana spell.
Yeah, so if you cast a 9-mana spell and then can't win with 4 turns, there's
a
something
problem.
wrong with your deck.
I mean, that's the fact.
I think even the pre-cons can win in that speed.
Like, Expropriate's floor is just so good. It's just so undeniably powerful at its floor that it's just so worth it to wall run. Even at 9 mana.
I mean, it's just, think of it like a Blatant Thievery with a...
extra
Blatant
turn.
thievery with bonus.
With-
Because an extra turn is
With literally Time Walk. Because it's a 7 mana, 2 mana.
Yeah.
You're thinking about a turn spell, which is around normally 5 mana, and then a steal spell is also around 5 mana.
For each. You get 20 mana worth in 9.
Yeah. It's just so valuable.
So efficient. So.
Yeah.
And it's any permanent as well, so you can
And it
still
doesn't even
lands.
target, which is the craziest part. It does
You can
not
steal
target.
things as a Shroud.
Yeah. You can
And
also...
it also is permanent, so you can steal their lands, you can steal
Their
their
hands. You can
planeswalkers.
steal their child.
You can steal their freaking Dramatic Scepter.
It's just so efficient and so undeniably good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, there were our takes on the 10 strongest blue spells. If you guys enjoyed, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give us a comment or review. And if you really like to share us with one of your friends. But that is all for this episode. We will have another one up probably in the next month, so keep your eyes peeled for that one.